Last week, we talked about the craziness that's been happening with all these international students and their visas getting canceled and SEVIS getting canceled. But this week, the news that we want to talk about is the mandatory registration. Because last Thursday, last Friday, our office was bombarded with questions and concerns about this mandatory registration. And there was so much information out there that we thought it would be appropriate and important to talk about this mandatory registration this week. First of all, what is it? USCIS released this form, G325R, that requires all undocumented people to register. And there's enormous backlash and misinformation online regarding this. There are plenty of people saying, do not register. The moment you do, you'll get deported. There are plenty of people who are also saying you must register. And as officers of the court, anybody in the legal profession, we have a duty. Our license is from the government. We have a duty to advise people to uphold the law and not to break the law, right? And so there's so much confusion and misinformation. And another major misinformation is that there was like a deadline. Like if you don't report, suddenly you'll get fined and you'll be jailed immediately. Obviously, that was not true, right? It just means it went into effect, and now this thing exists, and you are now encouraged to do this. So let's talk about this. Why is the government doing this? Okay, I'm going to talk a lot about this issue before we get into the F1 reinstatement. And again, this is a live recording, so if anybody has any questions and concerns, feel free to ask. You know, if you're spewing opinion about your personal beliefs, I respect that, freedom of speech, but we're going to be answering people who have real concerns. Okay, so I'm first going to explain why the government is doing this, what it is, and then we talk about a little bit strategically helping you decide if you need to do this or not. Okay, it's a very difficult decision, so I'm going to take it a little bit slower. First, it all started when the White House issued on January 20th, 2025, the Protecting the American People Against Invasion Act. Well, it's not an act, but it's an executive order. But it laid down the vision and the groundwork for this to happen. If you guys remember the previous live session, the moment this went into effect, like within almost a week, the customs officer across the country, every airport, land border, and northern border, southern border, they immediately implemented part of this. And what is it? Well, they canceled the humanitarian parole. So that was a few weeks ago. I was stuck in Mexico and I had to help clients come through legally, by the way. But anyways, that was part of this order. A few weeks since then, right, a couple weeks ago, based on this order, again, the Department of Homeland Security, as well as USCIS, as well as ICE, started canceling student visas. And that was last week's video where we talked about the ramifications of that. And again, this week, suddenly USCIS issues this. They're targeting three different groups, obviously, right? So the customs officer, based on this executive order, they're preventing new people from coming in via the humanitarian parole. Okay, what that is, I'm not gonna get into that. That's a separate story. People who are already in the United States with student visas, with parole status, if there's any sort of smear on your record, again, they're canceling that. And so people are getting removed and deported and their visas are getting canceled, right? So that is already happening. That started like a couple weeks ago. And now, this new one, this registration requirement, everyone who is here and is undocumented, register, or else you will face misdemeanor crime, you'll face a fine, you'll face jail time. That scared the bejesus out of so many different people, as it should be, right? It is a very frightening thing, and people are seeing this all over TikTok, Instagram. YouTube Shorts, people are getting this information from everywhere. It is real. It's not fake. The government is doing this. But again, why? In the past few years, it is a fact that millions and millions and millions of people have entered into the United States and they crossed the border or they even came through flights. They entered without inspection. And no government, no, it doesn't matter if you're Democrat or Republican, can stomach that problem. In the past, prior to the 4 or 5 years, that has always been going on for decades, but it was to a much smaller degree, a couple 100,000. The United States economy and its robust transformation could stomach that. But when it got to millions, record-breaking numbers that flooded the cities of San Francisco, Texas, New York, the entire country saw what was happening, and they put a mandate on the U.S. government, electing Donald Trump to stop this. And so that's one of the first things he did, and now every agency is trying to implement that. And one of the first things that they're doing is by creating this new registration requirement. Now, it is fair to say, who's gonna register? Who's gonna self-register? If they've crossed the border illegally, they know they're already violating US laws. And to the point of, I mean, most people don't know this, if you cross the border without inspection and get caught twice, you have a permanent bar. That is the most severe bar that the US immigration law holds, okay? Many other bars, misdemeanors and felonies, can be waived. You're married to a US citizen, you have extreme hardship, you're doing incredible good work in the United States. The United States has the ability to waive that. But you get caught twice entering without inspection, boom, permanent bar, no questions asked, it is forever. It is tantamount to illegally voting and claiming to be a US citizen. It is extremely severe. And millions of people have been doing this in the past few years. And so they implemented this. Now, if people who are crossing the border illegally know that they're violating this crazy US law, now why would they go and self-report? What are they going to be afraid of, a misdemeanor slapped on their record on top of this, everything else that they've already committed? The thing is, this policy, the government knows most people are not going to self-report. Let me break it down. The people who intentionally entering the United States to harm America, to harm US citizens, if they're criminals and spies, obviously they're not going to self-report, right? Many people who have entered, some of them are illiterate, some of them are fleeing persecution, they couldn't apply for asylum. If there's a huge swath of population that doesn't understand this, they're probably not going to self-report because they don't even know this exists, right? Then there's the population who might only want to be here for a couple months, maybe a year. There's, in the entire immigration history, having practiced for so long, we know there are plenty of people who just want to be here, work for a period illegally or legally, and then they leave and they'll never come back again. These people are not going to self-report either. So what does this actually do? The unintended consequence of this policy, rightly with good intention enacted, with good intention implemented by USCIS under the executive order of the White House, with all good intention, rightly so, the unintended consequence is it is harming and it is going to make the people who have been here for 5, 10, 15, 20 years, who are in the pathway to getting a green card. And it's making them face this incredibly difficult decision of whether or not to report. Okay, so I'm going to take it back. I'm going to rewind and explain this again. The people who are aiming to harm the U.S., they're not going to self-report. The people who are only going to be here temporarily, they're not going to self-report because they don't care about this misdemeanor fine or whatever, right? The people who have absolutely no pathway to becoming a citizen or getting a green card here in the U.S., they're not going to self-report either. So the millions and millions and millions of people who did cross in the past few years, I would say majority of them are not going to self-report. So why? Well, again, it was under executive order, so they must do this, right? But the thing is, if I'm really looking into it, if you're really analyzing the situation, who is going to report and who is fearful of reporting? It's the people, again, who had been here 5, 10, 15, 20 years, who maybe entered when they're much younger, maybe they couldn't apply for DACA for a variety of reasons, and they have children who are almost 21, they are going to petition them, or they got married to a U.S. citizen and they're in the process of filing for a waiver. These are all lawful pathways to getting a green card, right? So they are in process to getting a green card. They are already very much en route for that. What should they do? Because they entered without inspection. They have no biometrics. They have no legal work authorization. They've been paying taxes for the past 10 years, sometimes 20 years. And mind you, if they are trying to get a green card, they have good moral character, they have no criminal record, they have, removing them would cause U.S. citizens and many lawful permanent residents extreme hardship, extreme harm, and that's what the whole application is about. So these people who have a good chance of getting a green card, now they are faced with this. Should they self-report? This requirement of self-reporting, again, it doesn't apply to most non-immigrants. So people who have already valid visas who are here, people who have valid green cards, people who have valid work authorizations, all the DACA people who have work authorizations, people who have entered previously on parole, people who have overstayed their visa, so they're technically illegal here as well. They don't even have to self-report, right? So this new policy is very much targeting the illegal people who entered in the past few years. But the people that are struggling with this are not those people who entered illegal in the past few years. It's the people who are struggling because they are very much so close to getting a green card. Maybe just one more year. Maybe they already got their case approved and they just need to go to a consulate and come back in. If they don't self-report, bam, it's a misdemeanor. Maybe the consulate will deny them. If they don't self-report, bam, maybe USCIS will deny their waiver application. But what happens if you report? If you self-report, you're going to have to go to a biometric center. And at that biometric center, who knows if there will be an ICE agent ready to deport you. And because it's been unlawful here, there's very little argument and to win at the immigration court. You could, of course, right? But you might get stuck in that process. So that's the very, very troubling thing that is facing a lot of people. And that, again, I don't think that's what people on the news understand, right? People, if you're new to this, you've been seeing illegal people crossing, the government wants to prevent an invasion, they implemented this rule, you must self-report, if you don't, we could deport you later on. It all makes sense. But the United States immigration process is complicated, right, to say the least. And so this policy, even though it makes sense on the surface, there are all these unintended consequences that actually might turn around and harm the people who are in the process, right? So again, it is a very difficult situation. Everything is happening very fast. The White House issues this executive order. The agency have had 90 days to create this memo. They don't have time to really think through, and they're probably understaffed as well. So, I mean, I'm giving a lot of grace and understanding to the government, but that's the unfortunate situation. I guess I'm throwing in my application, all right? I'm willing to do this pro bono for the government. If you want to hire me, I'll do it for free. I will advise you for free to help your system be better, right? Maybe we would have restructured this questionnaire, right? Instead of making it so daunting, maybe you would update it and give more clarification. I'll do videos for the government for free to explain who will it harm. I mean, again, I want the system to work, right? I want the immigration system to work. I want it to be clear. I want the people who are in legal pathways to getting green cards. I don't want them to be harmed because, again, the whole process, it already works in a sense of people who are married to U.S. citizens, removing them would harm U.S. citizens. Why would you harm your own citizen? Because other people are coming in illegally, right? It doesn't make sense. I would have done this questionnaire and this reporting guideline a little bit differently, and it would have encouraged more people to apply. But that is the situation we are today. So now let me help you analyze it, right? If you are stuck in this very difficult situation between a hard place and a rock, right? This is how to analyze it. If reporting, right? If you report, this mandatory reporting system could increase your chance of your green card getting approved. And you have ways to decrease the chance of you being deported. It might be a good idea to do it. It's a really hard decision. It takes a lot of courage to make this happen. But let me walk you through that formula, right? If you're here and you're undocumented and you need to report, you already have a pathway to citizenship. You're married to a U.S. citizen, you're married to a green card holder, you already have a 601 application pending, you already have a waiver application pending. If you have your spouse is in the military, you have children in the military, you could do military parole. If you have spoken with an immigration attorney who's good and helping you, and you already have an application pending, now, if you don't report, your application might be denied. If you report and you report well, it might increase your application getting approved because, again, everybody else is not reporting, but you actually reported, so it actually is an affirmative proof of your good moral character, right? That's the second part. So it increases the chance of your case getting approved. Now, conversely, you might have an application pending, but your application might be terrible, right? You could always, people have different cases, and if you have tons of criminal record, and if your 601 is likely to be denied, or maybe your waiver application has already been denied, reporting will not significantly increase the chance of your case getting approved. Then that's a different calculation, right? And then lastly, and this is probably the thing that's most difficult for people to understand, because we're still in the unknown. This policy just came out. Will you be deported? If you self-report, people know where you live, people know where you work, people know where you are, all your relatives. Will they show up at the biometric center and deport you? So let's break that down, right? First, there is a high chance that the government already knows where you are, right? So a lot of things that you're reporting, if they really wanted to dig, they can find it, right? So first I want to put that out there, right? Do you think the FBI, CIA is really that incompetent that they cannot find any one of us? As legal professionals, we have access to very much the same data bank as many of the police enforcement, right? We use LexisNexis, they use LexisNexis. When we try to find somebody, we could probably pull anybody's phone number, email, we know all the properties you own, we know the firearms you carry, all these things. It's all in the database. Even our firm has access to it, let alone the FBI and the CIA. So again, self-reporting, the information you're giving, they can find it if they really want to. Of course, they don't, because they don't have the resources necessarily to go find the millions and the millions and millions of people. But I'm just saying, right, a lot of the information, if they really want to, they could. The second thing, I think this is the more obvious thing. If you have a criminal record, if you are somebody that the government wants to deport, and then you self-report and you show up at the biometric center, of course, If you've been a target, they will show up and deport you, right? So the people who know that they're a top priority are probably not going to self-report. So how do you increase the chance of you not being a target, even if you do self-report? How can you how can you ensure that after self-reporting, after going to the biometric center, you will just be getting your fingerprints taken and you can leave? That is really hard. Here are some ideas. Again, I'm saying only ideas because we don't know what it's like. But these are all the things that our clients are faced with, asking us, and so we just want to share that with you. In the application process, when you self-report, you can provide a lot of documentation and explanation. So the officers who are reviewing this and the ICE agents who are reviewing this, they can see this is your opportunity to communicate with them. So if you already have an immigration case, if your case is almost approved, if you have a very compelling waiver document, if removing you would cause a U.S. citizen harm, U.S. citizen children harm, even the things that don't fit the requirements with applying for a waiver, right? Because to apply for a waiver, you need U.S. citizen, immediate relative that is spouse or parents, but you're dealing with ICE agents here. They're not bound by that waiver requirement. So if removing you would cause a U.S. citizen child harm, if removing you would cause other people, U.S. companies, nonprofits, harm, this is your opportunity to prepare that, almost like a mini waiver, and communicate with the ICE officials, please don't deport me. That's what we recommend. Another thing to do is when you show up to the biometrics appointment, you have your family, you have the people who are vouching for you go with you. These ICE officers, of course, they have their job, they have their mission, but they also have their discretionary power as well. Each individual officer, as well as their commanding officer, as well as the entire agency, they have their authority as well. And so we have seen many people who, even though they get picked up by ICE, they get released because, again, based on their bandwidth, based on the number of work they have to do, number of people they have to deport under their quota system, they still have a discretion of who they want to choose, right? So they are people too, with families. If you can communicate that through the web portal, show up at the biometric center with the people, and again, the biometric center, you can also choose which biometric center you could try to go to, and you could try to extend the different appointments. So that is my recommendation. If you have to report, and if reporting can increase the chance of your case and your green card getting approved, and you can lower or decrease the chance of you being deported, this might be a good idea to think more deeply about. Do not just dismiss this as this is a government, on a whim. I'm not going to comply. Everybody should just not do it. That is a cop-out way to think about it, all right? I know it's hard. I know it's hard to stomach. But any answer that is just simply no, nobody should do it, or yes, everybody should do it, these are both cop-out answers. And so really think through this strategically and make your best decision. And that's the news update that I have for everyone. It's all based on this executive order. Okay, I'll take questions now before we jump into the success story segment on anything, this or F1 students or anything else.
Yeah, we got a lot of questions.
Okay.
After citizenship found spouse did mistake in N400 in her past residence address in U.S.A. Do this hurt?
After filing the N400, is that right? You're trying to get a citizenship, but you filled out the application incorrectly, and now you're stressed about the interview? Is that what's going on?
Yeah.
Okay, don't worry about it. People make mistakes. At the internship, not internship, at the interview, tell the officer, oh, I filled out this incorrectly, here's the update. They're supposed to do that anyways. They're supposed to go over that entire application and say, are you sure you spelled your name correctly? Are you sure you want to change your name? Are you sure you are this weight, this hair color? They're supposed to go through the application, and if anything is incorrect, they could redline it and change it. Don't worry about it at all.
Okay. I was deported in 1996 and I came again. If I get stopped by ICE, can I see the judge?
You already previously got deported, you entered again. If you get stopped by ICE and you're expedited, removed, and deported, can you see a judge? Most likely not. Most likely not, especially under this administration.
Okay. Why not go after EINs? There's a guy that made 5 million last year not paying taxes anymore.
Why don't you go after EINs? Okay, so EIN, right, employer identification number, or some other people have ITINs. Um, there are plenty of people making a lot of money and not complying with the law. And you're saying, why don't you go after them? Because the United States government is not just purely concerned about taxes. As police officers, they have to, there are a lot of things that are much higher on their priority list, such as homicide, vandalism, espionage. So your concern might be, here's a competitor making a lot of money, I'm paying taxes, they're not paying taxes, this is not fair. That for sure is a concern. It for sure makes the United States weaker. In doing everything, that might stop it, it might not stop it, but definitely there's way more things that is on the minds of the White House as well as CBP, because again, millions of people have flooded into the US. Trying to get them out and trying to revamp the entire system is higher priority.
Hi, filed a I-130 for Moroccan husband over 2 years ago. Still pending. Can he visit me? I am U.S. citizen.
You are a US citizen. You have filed an I-130 for your spouse. Can they visit you? It's been pending. So if they can get a visa, a tourist visa, they can. And I'm sure at the interview, the consular officer, you're afraid of them saying, well, you clearly have immigrant intent. You have a US citizen spouse and you have an I-130 pending. How do you prove you don't have immigrant intent? The argument that we have seen most effective, and it's not a guarantee, but the argument, the best argument is, yes, I have this immigration pending, but I don't need to immigrate this time right now. I want to go, we want to have a honeymoon, I need to visit his mother before she passes away. This is very important. I just need to go in for 2 weeks and come back. I'm not going to immigrate now because the process is still pending, right? So you make the argument that you don't have the immigrant intent now. You will later on, but not now. And that has worked for different cases that I've seen in the past.
How long does it take to refile for your new spouse after divorce and remarry?
How long can you reapply, or how long can you petition somebody else? Is that what you're asking? Like you already got your green card, or I mean, it depends on if you're the petitioner or you're for the beneficiary, right? So the question is, you already got divorced, and how soon can you marry and petition again? So it's a different calculation depending on who you are, right? If you just got the green card, somebody petitioned you, and you want to petition somebody else, that's one thing. And if you already petitioned somebody else, and then you got divorced and you want to petition a new spouse, right? So that's different. Either way, though, USCIS will see that record, and it calls into question whether or not your first relationship was real and your second relationship was real. So don't think, the past is gone. If that was a weak case and you're trying to do it again, you definitely need to prove your case again.
Can I renew my green card that expire next year and applying for citizenship at the same time?
Yes, you can apply for a new 10-year green card and you can apply for citizenship at the same time. They're two separate tracks. An I-90 renewing green card is relatively easy unless you have a criminal record. And N-400, the process is extremely long, like 6 months to a year. It has a lot of other requirements, but they are parallel. You could totally do it, no problem. I just kind of want to conclude with this thought for today. Okay, we are in an ever-changing landscape in this immigration world, and I know it's extremely disheartening. It is fearful. A lot of the news that you think is a nightmare, it cannot be real. You get text messages and emails that you don't think is real. Some of these are, and it's hard to stomach, and it's hard to believe that this is the reality that we live in. Many international students and their families have saved up their entire lives to make their American dream come true, just in the sense of coming here to get educated. But 3 years in, almost about to graduate, their student status getting terminated for something super insignificant. Or people who are here, have been here for 10, 15, 20 years, build up an entire life here, and they had legitimate heartful reasons that they wanted to come here to build a better future. And they've done America good. But now, because of things that other people have done, now their status is in limbo, or now they're getting deported. Whatever situation you are in, H-1B, F-1, you're in parole status, you're here and you're wishing to get a green card, it is understandable and reasonable to want to give up. And not to say other countries don't have great opportunities. There very might well be a brighter future for you elsewhere. Personally, I just went to Mexico City. I know Mexico is getting revamped. I know European countries, their stock market is rising. Many other places around the world look good. And so leaving might not be a bad thing. In looking at everything, here's the only thing that I really want to add to your calculations. Staying is hard. Right now it looks difficult. But don't give up on your dreams just because it is hard or it is harder. I'm not saying elsewhere is not great. Maybe this is a time to pivot. Everybody's circumstance is different. But don't give up just because it is hard. And it is hard. It is hard, and it's going to continue to be hard. It's not going to be easy anywhere. If you take a step back and look at what's going on in the past few months, a lot of people are being affected. Federal employees that work for the government who thought they had tenured and stable jobs, a lot of people lost that. People who work overseas and who had their dream jobs working at USAID, they lost their entire agency. Student visas got canceled. People who are on parole suddenly are getting deported. TPS, people who are fleeing persecution, somehow are leaving. This is shaking up the entire society, right? The White House is targeting elite universities, major corporations in the U.S. S&P 500. Almost nobody is exempt from the chaos that is happening in America and elsewhere. So it is totally understandable why you might want to leave. But again, don't abandon your hopes and your dreams just because it is hard. If there is a way out, if you believe from seeing everything that the United States will actually get better, if you kind of agree that doing this will actually make America great, if you could see a brighter future, and I know that's hard, the entire immigrant's dream and the promise of immigration is that this might be a better life. So if you do believe 5 years from now, 10 years from now, that the United States will be better, that you being here, putting down roots and fighting through the application process with U.S.C, with CBP, with ICE, with the immigration courts, if you believe that it's hard and it's harder, but if you fight through it and if there's hope and if you win and the United States will be better, then stick with that dream. I understand if there's absolutely no application process for you and it's super hard now, and you have great opportunities abroad, you're a calculating utilitarian animal, not animal, right? We are all utilitarian calculating machines as human beings, and it makes sense for you to choose what's best for you. But I just want to say, don't give up just because it is hard. Okay, so many people throughout history facing insurmountable obstacles when there's absolutely no hope in sight. But because they have believed and they tried, it worked out for them. So the biggest regrets in life are when people have given up too easily, when people set their standards too low, when people don't dream big enough, when people taken the easy way out, when they look back 10 years, 15 years, 20 years ago, they wished they would have fought through. So that is my encouragement and my edification for you. I know it's a crazy time. I'm living in it. We're trying to help clients every single day fight through this. So that is the thing that I want to share with everyone today. Thank you. Take care. See you again next week. Bye bye.
Thank you.
Okay. The lives are off?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Thank you.